Hey guys, it's John, and I'm back with Arthur Juror today, and we're going to revisit the Persian Parrotia that we did a video on about a year ago. Arthur, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How about yourself?
I'm great. I'm great. Happy to see you again. We're actually in South Carolina this time instead of North Carolina, and Arthur's come to visit us, and we're looking for an interesting day to learn a little more about bonsai. What's been going on with this tree since we saw it last year ago?
It had a great growing season, John. You know, when we made that video, I think it was the end of January, and then it was in a box at that time, if you remember.
I remember.
And before it broke bud in the spring, it got repotted into this container, which I thought at the time was a little over large, but a good transition pot.
Right.
I'm not so sure that it's over large anymore because this tree just grew and grew and grew. I wound up pruning it, I think, 4 times. And, you know, it would just keep pushing out more growth. It was amazingly robust. And we had a lot of rain, and it was a relatively cool summer. So conditions were really favorable.
And I think people sometimes forget that pruning is really how you develop that ramification. They want to watch their trees grow, but pruning is really that step to take to really increase the number of branches and
Sure.
to make a tree, take that tree to the next level. So,
Sure.
So to be able to do it 3 or 4 times in a season, that's a vigorous plant though.
Yeah, good health, and especially coming off of a repotting where the roots were really seriously pushed back.
Yeah.
But this is a vigorous, healthy tree, so it just exploded.
That's awesome. It looks great.
Well, you know, I have reservations about that. You know, and this is the cool thing about bonsai, because you're working with a living subject and it's growing and changing all the time, that things present themselves to you. You might have a certain idea at the onset, and after a while you have to make
changes.
Yeah, you have to, because the plant is unpredictable to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know, we try to limit that as much as we can.
That's the truth.
Yeah, it is always throwing things your way that you would not have anticipated. And sometimes those are unfortunate things, and sometimes they're nice developments, you know, better than what you could have hoped for.
Well, I know you give a ton of thought to the design of your trees.
Yeah.
What are you thinking now?
Well, John, I wanted to kind of go back and re-examine something that I think we mentioned in the first video with this tree, and that has to do with this idea of a continual line from the base of the tree to the apex of the tree. You know, this very strong central leader, which comes up here, and because of this year's growth, you know, it kind of splits different ways, but it doesn't do it till you're up here.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You can trace one continuous line all the way up,
Yeah.
you know, to what is that, like 4/5 of the way up
At
the
least,
line of the
at least.
trunk. And I set this tree up earlier in my own learning curve, and that's what I was taught to do, you know? And also, let's turn it sideways and look at it from the side, and you'll see a pronounced lean forward, right? Which was another thing I was taught to do.
Right.
You know, I had some great teachers, and I also learned a lot from books. And have here a book, pretty well-known book. This is John Naka's first book, and of course it has all these great illustrations. And you know, spent a lot of time, studying these, right? And it doesn't really matter, Naka's book or Yoshimura's book or just about anybody's book. You get these illustrations, right? Drawings, pen drawings. All right, so take a look at some of these trees, all right? These are under a heading that they're meant to be deciduous and broadleaf evergreen trees.
Right. So not conifers.
Right, not pines, not junipers, right? And then you look at the different styles that are shown, and you know, one thing that strikes me, every single one of them has a strong central
line.
Yes.
They really do. Every one of them does.
Whether it curves a lot or
Doesn't
goes
matter.
straight,
Doesn't matter.
that every single one of them does, right up to the apex.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you see some have horizontal limbs, right? And some have descending limbs.
Right.
And even the ones where they have ascending limbs, which they refer to as a broom style, you know, you still have that continuous central line, right? And it bothers me now. It didn't bother me back then because I was copying it, you know?
Right. And I really think about that central line more in a conifer kind of tree, particularly pine trees. That's the way I see our pine trees look, is a central line in the South Carolina tall pine trees. But I think I know where you're going here, and I tend to agree with you. But so, what's your thoughts?
Well, as I look at this, I'll take that.
What's up?
As I look at this, that no longer is pleasing to me.
Okay.
It looks contrived, you know,
Right. Right.
not believable.
Right.
And I want it to look believable. I understand bonsai is not intended to be a scale model, an exact replica of a tree in miniature. There's an artistic element to it, but there's a wide range from the completely contrived and artificial to the completely, you know, natural and wild. And there's a lot of territory in there to work. And I want the trees to be more, my trees to be more toward that wild, but not unkempt looking.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So I look at this line like this, and now these big branches coming back here, and the whole thing feels lopsided to me. You know, I don't find it agreeable. It presents best from the front, right? And now, even that idea, the idea of there being a fixed front, which I adhered closely to for the longest time, that is becoming less desirable too.
You know, and it sounds like, you know, to me, this look you're going for sounds like it ought to be easy, but my experience, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
To achieve a look that's very natural, but without the hand-to-man influence on it.
Yes.
Have you wondered? Have you changed the plant? Have you changed the angle of the tree a little bit? I know it has a really nice root base, so changing the angle is going to have to be a last option. But does that change the look for you at all?
I thought about tilting it this way. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be done that way. But I don't know. I have a different take on it.
Okay.
And to illustrate what I would like to talk about, we need to change our perspective on the tree.
Okay.
Not only in terms of not just seeing it from what's conceived of as the front, but seeing it from a completely different aspect altogether. And that is to look down on it from above.
Okay.
So let's do that. All right, so now we got it down on the ground, or it's on a low turntable, and we can look at it from up above. And you know, you change your perspective, and sometimes it allows you to see things that you don't pick up on when you're looking at it the normal way.
I know a lot of times when I wire a tree, whether it's a deciduous tree or a conifer, I will look at it from above to look at the branch placement and spread, just to make sure they're all going to be out there.
Yeah, get equal access to the sun.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, you're taking the sun's perspective for a moment, you know, and that's what allows you to see that clearly. But it also can show things from a style standpoint. And for example, there's a big gap right here.
There is a big hole right there.
Yeah. And that's a product of this.
Isn't that for the birds to fly through?
Yeah, big birds. You know, turkey vulture could go through there. And that's a byproduct of the trunk moving forward,
right.
Which was another one of those standard things, you know, that I learned to do early on, and maybe overdid to some extent. But then, you know, have a branch like this, and the intent is to grow it out and fill that space in, but it'll always look awkward, right? Because you're going to have this much going to the rear.
Right, and only this much going to the front.
That's right.
So lots of depth, but not a lot of front perspectives.
And you see that when you look at bonsai, you know, from other perspectives than what's conceived to be the front of the plant.
Right.
You often will see that they present very well from that one aspect, and then they look strange from all the others.
The lean forward, you know, with the arms welcoming you.
Yeah.
Looks great from one perspective, but if you're thinking about you know, designing a natural tree that looks good from all perspectives, and that may not work as well.
Yeah, and you know, again, for the longest time, I held fast to that idea of having a formal viewing front.
Right.
And then the more I thought about it and heard other people talking about the desirability of it presenting well from all angles, you know, that presents an even greater challenge. Because you're still only going to present one view toward the viewer in a formal display.
Right, exactly.
Right. But you want it to be believable and not strange, regardless of how a person looks at it.
You know, in my garden, one of the things, my prime spots in my garden are those spots where I can come at the tree from multiple angles, and it's really kind of pleasing to have a tree there that looks good from each of those directions or has something to offer. A little different than a formal display, but I'm the one appreciating them most of the time, so a little different situation for you. But.
Well, you know, it's in the end, bonsai you do primarily for your own enjoyment.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, and at this stage of the game, I want to be working on trees that look believable, regardless of what direction you perceive them from.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess you're going to do some work on this. Are you?
Yeah.
What do you have in mind?
Well, what I want to do, John, is take some of these branches that are, you know, going to the back. They do have an upward sweep, but they're conceived of as back branches, and I'm going to go ahead and think of them instead as being contributors to the crown of the tree.
Okay.
All right. So a branch like this is going to come up and contribute as much, or perhaps even more, ultimately, than this one does.
Okay.
It's better located. It's more central, you know. But then all these others will be adding their weight to it, so that we get that rounded crown, and it's built from all these different parts, rather than just parts coming off of one line trunk.
Right. Well, I'm going to be very interested to see what you do to try to disguise the one line or eliminate the one line.
Yeah.
And see where this goes. So.
Yeah, it's not going to happen in a day. That's for sure.
Oh,
you know.
Come on now, instant bonsai.
You know, with each move, it seems like one step forward, two steps back.
Yep.
It's gonna. What I do today is gonna necessitate, I think, a couple more years of development before this tree becomes showable again. Even given the pretty robust rate of growth that it has.
It always takes time. I think I see what you're going to go, but where you're going to go. But I'm anxious to see what you do to it. So you ready to get started?
Yes.
Awesome.
Good.
What gauge wire is the right thickness for each branch when you're wiring?
Well, you know, take your best guess, right? Say we want to move this branch here, and take a piece of the gauge that you think is correct, hold like an inch, inch and a half, and press down. And if it bends the branch and the wire remains rigid, it's good. It might be too much, in which case you might try a lesser gauge just to see. But if you wanted to bend this one, say, with this, and you press down, the wire will bend and the branch stays in place. So that gives you some sense to begin with, and then over time you just kind of pick it up and you'll know by sight approximately what you need.
Well, here we go, Arthur. You've spent a couple hours working on this, and are you happy with what you've achieved here? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm pleased with it, and you know, it took a couple of hours because we were socializing as we went there. It wasn't actually that much work, but some big chunks came off, and particularly this one up here, where several inches of the main line was removed, and we went back to 3 secondary things, which are all now kind of moving upward. And then back here, you know, this looks a little coarse right now. You notice it's not wired. And the intention is to let this grow pretty vigorously, to fatten it up some, and then it'll get cut back. So there's no real reason to wire that at present. This one, same kind of game plan. It's intended to grow for a while and get big, but I wired that one because I wanted to put some movement in it.
That makes perfect sense.
Straight.
That one's got, this one has shape already, but it needs a little more size to, yeah. And then eventually the crown will cover this whole area, so you'll lose some of that one line to the top idea.
What do you think?
I like it. I think you've improved it. You know, we talked about this a little while ago, but you know, I think last year when we looked at this, we looked at that top and we talked about taking it off, and I think it certainly looks more deciduous now, or is looking more deciduous. It looks better than what I expected. I thought it might be a little rougher, and I wonder eventually if some more might come off, but at this point I think it looks great.
You know, it's a little congested right here.
Yeah.
And truthfully, if I could have a wish for it, I would want this to be more horizontal.
Right.
And of course there are ways you could notch it and bend it down. I don't know. I don't know that it's worth that trouble, and certainly it isn't something I would do now. We're in January, you know, that's not the time to do such things. That's one irritating thing to me. But yeah, it'll change. You know, there's still an opening up here, but there are things that will fill that in. This, for example, there's a branch here, there's stuff
Small
coming off of here.
yeah.
That's right.
Here.
That's right. It's too little to mess with now, but there's stuff that can go into that zone and fill it out over time. So, you know, there's one thing I want to mention. I spoke to you about it, but I want to mention it on the video, is that we recently went through an intense cold period.
Right.
You know, and this tree got down to 8 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
So was it damaged? I don't know for sure. We'll find out in the spring. But there's some growth that was put on very late. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of this stuff, it feels pretty turgid still, but I wouldn't be surprised if it failed.
Yeah.
And, you know, something back here had to break out. And if that's all that happened, I'm
that's
okay.
not a problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's no issue. That's no issue. That's a good thing, actually.
Just a little natural pruning, as they say.
So, I think it looks excellent. I think you've made it, you stepped it up to the next stage in that development. It's going to be out in your display garden soon, I'm
You
sure.
think?
Well, in a couple of years, but still, I mean, soon is relative in bonsai. So.
That's soon is relative, period. But in bonsai, it's you know, time gets stretched out. There is no doubt about that. Enjoyed it, John.
Thank you, Arthur. This is John, and I'm so happy to be here today with Arthur Jur. And you know, Arthur has a new title since we've seen him last. He is the new master of the artistically styled, miniaturized trees cultivated above ground. So please meet Master Jur. And here's a prime example of his work. Artistically styled, miniature tree, cultivated outside of the ground.
I can live with everything except the master part, John. We don't have masters in America, I'm sorry.
All right, that's good.